Great. So today, as advertised, we're talking about self-determination and thinking about the role that self-determination makes in the preparation for transition. And so this talk is really focused on ways to support the development of self-determination in your students. That's something that's happening all the time at Cotting and is also happening all the time at home. And sometimes it's hard to recognize those steps. And we're hoping that this talk and the sort of structure we're using to explore self-determination will help you notice and recognize the things that are already happening. Welcome to those who have just joined. One of the resources we are very fond of is the I'm Determined website. The link is here. And as you might imagine, it's all about self-determination. So that means it is about helping you, speaking to students, to succeed and be the best you can be. The website has tools, videos, and ideas to help you set goals, be heard, and reach for the stars. And so this website has a lot of resources for parents and for transitioning students. And a large part of it is speaking to the students themselves with tools, structures for exploration, checklists, all of those kinds of things that you can support your students to look at and complete and involve them in the process.
And Pam, I'd like to give people a sneak peek of what the homepage of the website looks like, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right. So if you go to the homepage of the I'm Determined website, you'll see the first section here is specifically for youth. And they have a lot of tools, like Pam said, specifically for young adults. But if you scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, you'll see that there's sections outlined for educators. And we have many teachers at Cotting School who use these resources. And there is a section for families, and that would be a great place for you all to explore.
Yes. Thank you, Lola. And I just want to say a short note about how, as a parent, in my experience and maybe in your experiences as well, self-determination may not always feel positive. As a parent, I often think, well, self-determination is great, and I want my child to be making, my adult child to be making their own decisions. But what decisions are they making? And what are they self-determined about? And for the moment, if we can sort of think about this as like any other developmental step, it's not always going to be applied exactly as we hope it might in the future. But we want to talk about ways to kind of expand that view today to thinking about and also noticing the aspects of self-determination as you see them. So there's supporting self-determination and potentially using some of the tools Lola just talked about, but there's also an important piece of this is noticing and naming. That sort of takes the value judgment out of it and helps to support that process without getting too far into, well, what is the decision you're making?
All right, Pam, I'll actually talk about this. So I wanted to show everyone two videos from the website. The first is a brief overview explaining competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And the second video is a video describing relatedness from the perspective of a young adult with a disability.
Determined project aims to encourage self-determination in youth so they can chart a path to independent living by taking control over their own lives, setting goals, believing in themselves, and starting down a pathway to achieve their dreams. While explaining self-determination can't be completely broken down in a single video, let's touch on 3 important aspects: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. The ability to control what happens to you in any given situation is called autonomy. Living autonomously requires having chances at practicing life, making choices on your own, and recognizing the outcomes of those decisions, even when those choices might result in failure. By practicing autonomy now, over time, you'll be able to gain confidence in your own abilities. These practice opportunities can be as simple as choosing chores to complete at home, or in a school setting, being given the opportunity to make decisions in your education. Feeling like you have the skills needed to complete a goal is known as competence. One part of competence is having the skills needed for whatever task you're setting about to do, but the other part, which is just as important, is believing that you have those skills. Identifying strengths and weaknesses can help foster competence, and similar to autonomy, finding opportunities to practice will eventually lead to true competency. You can start right away by trying to answer questions or solve a problem on your own, and parents or caregivers can help foster competence by providing positive and constructive feedback. Relatedness is feeling a sense of belonging. This could be to a family, community, classroom, or school. Fostering relatedness centers around finding opportunities inside and outside of school for youth to spend time with people who have similar interests or goals. This could be something like joining a basketball team to having a part-time job at an animal shelter. In addition, being aware of your disability, identifying strengths, and setting goals are all important factors in boosting relatedness and feeling a sense of belonging. I'm Determined teaches that practicing specific skills, abilities, and beliefs strengthens these 3 important aspects. We invite you to explore some of the resources and tools we've developed to equip you on your journey to becoming a self-determined individual.
Can I just jump in really quickly and say that I want to apologize to the 1 or 2 people that may be here, because I totally encouraged them to come learn about eligibility for DDS, which we are going to do. It was originally supposed to be on this date, but it got postponed because of Anthony Maviglia's schedule to be on May 3rd. But this is a wonderful workshop today. And anybody who thought that it was going to be about eligibility, I apologize, mea culpa. It will be on May 3rd.
Thanks, Kathy.
All right. I think a real strength of the resources on this website is that they always offer perspectives of young people with disabilities. So there are many, many videos from the perspectives of young people. They in fact have 1 video for each of these principles: competence, autonomy, and relatedness. I love to show these to my students and watch them and talk about them. We're not going to watch all 3, but I would like to show you 1. I thought relatedness would be a great one for us to look at. I think that our Cotting community really values this principle highly. I think it's a strength for us as a school community, and I think it's a strength for our families and our students.
Relatedness is, for me, it's being able to relate to someone else. So what they're going through. So like here I'm Determined, we're able to relate to each other by their experiences that we're having, whether it's in our IEP meetings or whether it's applying the skills that we're learning and I'm Determined in the real world today.
Relatedness is the ability to associate in a group. Kind of means to feel like you belong in it. with a group of people.
Like say, for example, it's like the first day of school and you do not know anybody. And it's just like, you kind of feel like outside it a little bit. But then throughout the days go by and the months, you get to know those people and all that, and you start becoming friends. That's definitely an example of relatedness.
I often lack a sense of relatedness whenever I am in new environments that I am unfamiliar with.
It's also like a sense of belonging. Like we're all one family. It doesn't matter whether we have a disability or not. We all see each other as human beings.
Oh, sorry, everyone.
Okay, so we're gonna, first of all, does anybody have any comments or thoughts about what we've been talking about so far? Or anything that you noticed about those videos? You can put it in the chat, you can raise your hand, or you can unmute and just say. Okay, so we're gonna go on. I think first of all, those three principles are important in sort of organizing how we think about self-determination. And sometimes we think about self-determination from the point of view of the outcome, sort of what is the decision, what does the student want, what does the student not want. But those elements that we just talked about are the conditions in which self-determination can grow, sort of like the sunlight for self-determination. So now we're going to go into a little more detail. We're going to talk about the different elements. So this is another way to sort of break it down and increase sort of the places where practice and development can happen. It's not going to happen across the board all at once. So the first is choice making, selecting a path forward between known options, decision making, actually selecting a path, problem solving, the skill of finding solutions when things are complicated, goal setting and attainment, the ability to develop a goal, plan for implementation, and then measure success. Self-regulation, the ability to monitor and control one's own behaviors, actions, and skills in various situations. Self-advocacy, skills to speak up and or defend a cause or a person. Internal locus of control, which means the belief that one has control over outcomes that are important to their own life. Self-efficacy, belief in one's own ability to succeed in specific situations or accomplish specific tasks, kind of like self-confidence. And self-awareness, basic understanding of one's own strengths, needs, and abilities. So we have it here like the periodic table.
So we're going to start with talking about choice making, but I think this is kind of connected to the internal locus of control, because if you begin giving folks a choice about things, it helps them to have that feeling that they have some control. So but then they have to have the skill of making that choice between two different known options. Do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And so we have a couple of examples that we're going to talk about. I also wanted to mention, yes, and so I'll start with the playing the Would You Rather game. Lola turned me on to this game, and I've used it a lot in groups and sometimes in my individual work with students. And it's an opportunity to use the best communication method you know, that shares their opinions and their ideas and their perspectives with each other, but making a game out of it gets them engaged and interested. So would you rather work outside or inside? You know, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? Is it chocolate or vanilla? Is it, there's just so many choices that you can make. I know with my own kids, even like putting out 2 outfits and say, do you want to wear this one or that one, when they're even starting when they're little. So as long as it's, you know, appropriate to the weather, they can choose. It's a great skill. You can do the next slide because we have another example here too. If you want to put the next slide on, Lola.
Can you guys see the next slide?
Yes,
Not
I
yet.
can.
I can't yet, but I can go to my little own thing because I did pull it
Yeah.
up and look. Oh, there it goes. I think I'm in a little time warp over here because my Zoom has been something's happening in the environment or something. Anyway, Miss Paul's class, because we asked for some examples from the rest of our community of different things. They practice choice making during literacy while reading Choose Your Own Adventure book. They make their choices. So that's those books where you can, you know, see what's going to happen next and you pick what's the next part of it. Sometimes those have been in theaters. There's been things like that too. They make choices about what to do next while they read and compare and contrast what happens in each story. So, you know, there's different outcomes when you make choices. So that's a way to practice it. I also find that, you know, it can relate to emotional regulation, because when we are working with folks who maybe have gotten a little bit upset about something or too excited about something, sometimes just giving a choice like, would you rather have Miss Tyrer or Dr. Varrin walk you down to lunch now because it's time for lunch? Having that choice takes some of that emotional regulation out. So giving kids choices can really help in so many ways, and it's wonderful for them to be able to practice that. Move on to the next slide.
All right, our next skill is decision making, which is a bit more complex than choice making. It's the skill of selecting a path forward based on various solutions that have been thoughtfully considered. So I think about this as taking information that you've learned about a situation and using that information to help you decide what is the best path forward. And a really awesome example from Cotting School is that twice a year, our Capstone and our upper school students have the opportunity to pick their electives. They get some forms and they answer questions about what types of activities they like, about topics, about skills that are strengths for them. And they use these surveys to help decide which electives they will participate in their programming. And through the process of doing this, they're deciding, well, what class is going to best fit my needs, and my preferences. And here you'll see a few photos of some of our students in their electives and some examples of those surveys that they fill out. For example, if you want to be in the book club, here's what happens in the book club. Do you like reading books? Do you like talking with friends? Do you like learning about different topics? So figuring out how they feel about each one of these things before deciding, hey, yeah, this is the elective that I want to take.
Right. Right. It's really practice with that process of what do you think about? And also part of the practice is students may or may not like their electives once they get into them. And so that can be the opportunity for another conversation and another problem solving opportunity to think about, okay, what are we going to do now?
Right. And then can that student identify, well, what were the parts of that I didn't like? Were there parts I did like, parts I didn't like? What was hard for me? What parts were easy? So that the next time they're making a decision, they can think about that experience that they had.
Okay. So the next element we're talking about is internal locus of control, which is a very fancy way of saying the belief that one has control over outcomes that are important to his or her own life, that their preferences and opinions will relate to what eventually happens for them. And that's the electives process is a choosing process is a really good example of that as well, because students are given the internal the control, and so the decision is not about, well, someone else made me do this or it's on my schedule. They are actually choosing it, and having that experience and having the sense that what you say matters or what you feel matters is very important for all of the things we're talking about today. So here's another example. So OTs and other therapists are working on skills that support internal locus of control from a young age. Miss Aleda's preschool students practiced hitting a switch to make some popcorn. Older students might choose the music or exercises that they do during a PT session in the fitness center. So the opportunity to make choices and experience the results of your choice are sprinkled all through the student's experience.
And problem solving, the skill of finding solutions to difficult or complex issues. Is it going to be a hard problem? You know, I got to look around and think about that. This is a really important skill in life. When there's a problem, what are we going to do about it? So let's give some examples. So students work on problem solving all the time during small groups in their classroom and with CTs in our groups, with counseling groups, on community trips or at work. They get a lot of support with this, but they think about the size of the problem. We've heard about that from the zones of regulation for years. Is it a small problem? Is it a very big problem? And that's a really great place to start with problem solving, because as you may have experienced, sometimes some little change in the schedule feels like an enormous problem, but when we begin to talk about that, we can come to see that it's a smaller problem. And developing the tips for fixing the problems, you know, is it a problem that's fixable or not, and to determine, you know, is there something you can do about it, or is it something that you have to learn to cope with? Those are kind of, you know, that you can't change. There's some things we can change and some things we can't. But staying calm, teaching those self-regulation school tools of deep breaths and stop, think, act, and what is the problem, and is this something I need help with or something I can do myself? These are all choices that folks can learn to make over time. They might need cueing, they might need visual supports, as you see some of the things that have been used here. But this is a practice in how to solve problems, you know. What is the problem? What are the steps I need to take? What's step 1, step 2, step 3? Next slide. And here's an example. So in science, people are always working on problem solving, very scientific task, physics problems, engineering problems, also learning about teamwork and how to work together to accomplish something. And people using crime scenes to think about, you know, how to solve problems, learning about self-advocacy, and how to speak up to solve the problem. All of these things come into context. Ms. McCarran gave all these examples in her science classes of ways these pictures come from her class. And, you know, I love the creativity that she brings to her work with the Cotting CSI, you know, I like it. So it's a great.
And Ms. McCarran also incorporates this self-efficacy and affirmations with her students, especially during really stressful times like MCAS time, where students might be a little stressed and worried about testing. They're doing affirmations and they're writing, I can do it, I need help, and that's okay. These are really concepts that are supported throughout our school building. And you can see it in every classroom.
Yeah. And as we move into thinking about transition, one of the things that I really like is helping students, and teachers are doing this across the board in Capstone, helping teachers to students to think about, well, what am I looking for when I leave Cotting? What are the things at Cotting that I like, that I want to make sure are in my future? So is it if I'm going to a day program, what are the things I'm looking for in a day program? What do I like about this, and what do I want to be the same? Or what might be different that I'm looking for? Maybe I'm not going to go to a day program, and what am I looking for in my future? Go ahead, Lola.
All right. Next is goal setting and attainment. This is the ability to develop a goal, plan for implementation, so that means outline those steps, and to measure success. Now, our students, especially our Capstone students, are always talking about goals, both big goals, like maybe goals on the IEP, or goals about what they are going to do once they graduate, and small goals. So goals like, I'm going to have a successful day at work today. They read about the goals in their IEP so that they're familiar with what they're working on during the day. They might even collect data or share observations to reflect on how they are doing with their goals, reflecting on their strengths and their areas for growth, or even reviewing progress notes at the end of the quarter to see how they've done. We spend a lot of time thinking about goals, writing about goals, and assessing how we're doing. One of my favorite things is when students can have goals about setting goals. I've had students who have had goals about setting their own goals, monitoring their own progress, taking their own data, so that they are able to see what that process looks like and have the control over that process rather than the teacher being the one to do that.
Lola, that's a great example. And I love the way you showed a kind of progress note that a student could participate in and assess where they are in those goals. Okay, now we're going to talk about self-efficacy, which is the belief in one's own ability to succeed in specific situations or accomplish specific tasks. So self-efficacy is a little more specific than kind of a feeling of general confidence. It is based on experience, knowing that when an individual knows they have been able to succeed in a certain task or a certain environment, part of the Project Bridges program is to help students to begin to feel like they have self-efficacy when they go to a new job site, or because they have been able to learn their job and do it successfully over time before. So here's an example. At Cotting School itself, our job coaches and program assistants work with students daily during on and off campus jobs to help them learn new tasks and to succeed at new experiences outside of the classroom. And so these are the practice at the tasks that students will do at Cotting, that they can take hopefully a sense of familiarity and knowledge that I was able to do this at Cotting, and that can help in learning how to do it in another environment. Here's another example. Often our students are very nervous When students visit day programs and see someone that looks like them, having a positive experience there, they feel less afraid. And here are a couple of examples about ways to prepare for visiting an adult program. And Kathy, I wonder if you want to add something to this.
Well, it's just that it is really true that both when students have an exact plan, but even when they begin to explore things like day programs and actually, when we have so many students now, alumni out in day programs, and they go there and they visit and they see somebody they know that they were a classmate with having a good time in that day program, their nervousness about it begins to come down a little bit. And I think that's really one of the wonderful things about our students staying in touch with alumni in particular, because they can kind of be mentors to them about what it's like. And we prepare them. Lola and the rest of the classroom teachers in Capstone have begun regularly taking visits to these day programs and preparing them, asking questions, looking at the websites. And when they go visit, when they're in the later stages of being at Cotting School and they're starting to visit the places that mom and dad have picked out for them, or whoever has picked out for them, and they come back and they share that information and share pictures and share details of the activities, those things just take so much anxiety away once they sort of feel like, oh, that could be okay. I see somebody doing that. Yeah. And again, about self-regulation, let's talk about that a little bit. The ability to monitor and control one's own behavior, actions, and skills in various situations. So, that is really something we've been working on here for years and years, and students get a lot of strategies and skills, and there's never enough. We're really taking a big focus on it now, talking about how to connect your body cues with your feelings so that you can identify what your body feels like when you're having a feeling, what's happening in your body when you're having an emotion, and then developing strategies to cope with that. And I love that little picture with the yoga mat and the deep breathing and the writing in a journal and taking walks. These are all skills, or just changing environments, talking to somebody, listening to music. These are all things that folks can learn to choose when they're starting to feel dysregulated, to help them be able to do something themselves to self-regulate, not to have it be done for them. And these physical cues. So you can go on to the next slide and we'll talk about some of the examples. We use the curriculum, like most of you have probably heard of the zones of regulation, and that big word interoception, which is what I was just talking about, the body clues that connect to the feelings. So what is your body feeling like? Are you, when you're anxious, you're going to get maybe sweaty. Your breathing might go faster. So maybe you feel hot. Maybe it's hard to sit still when you're feeling anxious. What are some of the body cues for when you're really, really tired? Well, maybe you have low tone, you want to slouch over. There's so many, and you're going to connect those things. It's really going to help people to be able to identify what their feeling is, because then you learn to adapt with, well, these are the tools for when I'm feeling low and slow. Oh, and these are the tools for when I'm feeling anxious. And these are the tools for when I'm scared or when I'm sad. Like some of the tools might overlap, because being very excited does the same thing to your body that being very scared does, really. It will probably do similar things, but sometimes different things for different feelings. And to be able to identify that feeling is really important, and then identify the proper strategy to go with that situation. Yeah.
Okay. And then also self-awareness, basic understanding of one's own strengths needs, and abilities. And this is a process, of course, actually a lifelong process, but certainly a process through childhood into young adulthood. So Lola has some nice visuals here about like, not like. And this example shows that our students spend a lot of time learning about themselves during group counseling and health groups. They discuss disability awareness, boundaries, and more. And this means that as a group, they share, how do they describe their own disability? What is their disability called? What do they call it? How would they like other people what would they like other people to know about that? What does it mean about the kind of help or assistance one might need, or the ways that it helps socially if other people are aware of the things that relate to their disability? And also, what are the strengths of that kind of way of being in the world? Boundaries are about sort of a basis of self-advocacy, feeling agency over your own body, and making sure that students feel empowered to say no if someone asks them to do something that makes them uncomfortable. And this starts early here. Starting in lower school, many of our students are proud to be involved in their IEP meetings in whatever way works for them. So this is a place where students can share their self-awareness, as well as their likes and dislikes and their hopes and goals for the future. Here's another example. Many of our students, oh yes, again, participating in their IEP as early as lower school. And here, Ms. Norgard's students filled out a graphic organizer to introduce the topic and have been talking all year about accommodations, goals, and more. Other students learn about or create student-centered presentations to share. So on the right, there's a student-centered presentation, and on the left, a graphic organizer, including what do you know? I went in about IEPs. I went into a big room. Parents and teachers come in and they talk about how you've improved in school. We all have one. It has math and reading, and all of the important details about IEPs. Okay.
Before I talk about self-advocacy, which I guess does come into this, as we were talking about disability awareness, I just wanted to say that one of the things that I've found in my groups in particular, I love to work in groups with folks because as students learn about their own disabilities and their own needs, and then they share that with their friends in their classroom, it creates such a sense of, I'm not alone. Oh, they have that problem too. And, oh, now I understand that the reason that person didn't answer me, for example, isn't because they don't like me. It's because they're very quiet and it's hard for them to get the words out. So they didn't answer me for a long time. And that's why. It's not because they don't like me. All those kinds of things, it aids in communication so much. And I have seen kids really just bond much more strongly with their classmates because they understand each other. And they don't judge each other and they don't tease each other about it. They accept each other. Isn't that what we all would love to have? So self-advocacy, the skill necessary to speak up and or defend a cause or person. And see the examples. So our teachers and our staff work on self-advocacy every single day. Students practice saying what they want, need, like, or don't like, and more. You know, I matter because I like to go on the swing. And making the books about self-advocacy, all the little things there. So many things they do every single day. You know, sometimes it's a little bit hard because we actually do get to know what our students need. And I'm sure that's true for you too. It's easier to just take care of things for people and not necessarily ask them to explain it to you. but it's good for them to practice within reason or to have new people. That's one of the reasons I encourage people to try getting a PCA for their student that's not mom and dad or sister, brother, or somebody that's really known, so that they can practice teaching somebody how to take care of them, so that they, you know, in a safe, comfortable environment. I love to see them do that.
Can I add two things here, Kathy? The first is, I'm sure we've talked about this before, but the importance not just on advocating for the things you like or your preferences, but also knowing how to advocate for the things you don't like. So this picture shows a cool poem that a class wrote, which is called the Never poem, which is a whole list of things that those students don't like. We've talked about this with Charting the LifeCourse, the vision planning tools, thinking not just about the things you like, but also the things you don't like. And the second thing I want to say is, kind of Kathy touched upon this, always reevaluating and circling back to your child or your student to make sure that those preferences, those likes or don't likes have not changed. Because as we all grow and learn, we are changing. The things we like change. I saw a really funny meme one day, which was about a person whose caregivers were like, oh, he loves the Beatles. He loves the Beatles. He loves the Beatles. And that was all they would listen to, is the Beatles. And the little thought bubble in the person's head said, oh my goodness, I said one time 15 years ago that I liked the Beatles, and now that's all I ever listened to. Making sure we are always reassessing and always getting that feedback from our children and our students, because their likes do change. So we should be listening to that advocacy.
And so one of our groups, we've been talking about more about ourselves, learning what is going on in our communication styles. So do we have a passive communication style, an aggressive communication style, or an assertive communication style? For example, that's one of the things we've been learning about as we're learning about ourselves. And you know, we did a lot of work with what do we like, what do we don't like, and how do we need to take care of that and amongst ourselves. But this was really, really helpful. And I know I gave this little example before to help people understand about each other's communication style. And I really like this because, you know, I like to think about this even in my own communication. We all get frustrated with what's happening in the world sometimes, or, you know, when we have to wait in line, or when the traffic is bad, or all those different things. And so how are we going to respond to those frustrations? Are we going to be passive and not do anything about it? Are we going to be aggressive and, you know, be inappropriate about it? Or are we going to be assertive, which is what we're suggesting is the best place to be in these groups, you know? And kids come to that on their own, because when you're assertive, you're okay and the other person is okay. You can tell them what you want, what you need, what you like, what you don't like, but doing it in a calm, polite, peaceful kind of way, as opposed to not saying anything at all. Then you're not getting what you need, or being aggressive, and then you might get what you need, but the other person is now, you know, either hurt or afraid or nervous about something because of your tone of voice, or, you know, your attitude. Yeah. So
Kathy, and I think this is a great example of how these skills connect to relatedness, and they build that relatedness amongst a group of people. I now have an understanding of you and what you need. You have an understanding of me and what I need, and we're able to be a more productive community together, and we appreciate each other, and we can work together. All right, I'm going to take a few minutes here to show you some of what I think are the most helpful tools on the I'm Determined website so that you could maybe take a peek at them yourself. Some of these are tools that teachers use, they're tools that students use, and I think that they are tools that you could use at home as well. The first is an assessment checklist. So this is just really simple list of skills related to self-determination, which we've talked about. And you could go through this list and give your child a rating or ask your child to fill out this list and rate themselves. I'll read a few of the topics. I set goals and get what I want or need. I attend and participate in my IEP meeting. I ask for help when I need it. So, in looking at an example, I did this with one of my students and I gave them this visual rating scale to help them decide if the phrase I read them is something they never do, if it's something they sometimes do, or if it's something that they always do. And by filling this out, we were able to look at what are this student's self-determination strengths. And this student had strengths in participating in the IEP, telling people what they like and don't like, caring for their personal needs, and making good choices. And also from filling out this survey, we were able to see some potential areas for growth, things that were a little harder for this student, knowing what he needs, setting goals, and describing the learning difficulties. The second really helpful tool that they have on their website is called the one-pager worksheet. So you can fill out this one-pager. It includes strengths, students' preferences, their interests, and their needs. This is an activity that we do in our classroom. Students fill these out in whichever way is appropriate for them. Some students can type a list of their answers. Some students are using their communication devices to answer these questions. Some students are using pictures. And this can be, I've seen parents use this tool sort of as like a one-pager to give to PCAs or new support staff to help them get to know their students. The next tool is really fun. It's called a Good Day Plan worksheet. So this is an opportunity to talk to your child about what makes a really good day for them. If they were thinking about their best day ever, what would be the things that happen on their best day? So this is actually sort of like a vision planning tool. It's helping you to think about what are the things that are really important that should be happening on a really good day. Thinking about whether those things happen now. Thinking about the actions that your child or their caregivers need to take to make sure that that happens. And then thinking about who can support you, your family, or your child in making sure those good day things do happen. Here are a few examples. Now, the I'm Determined website has a built-in app so that you can fill out these tools with some picture support. So students who might need some choice-making support, students who need visuals, they have some of those tools on the website. And this is sort of the structure, the outcome that you get if you use that app on the website. Next is a goal plan worksheet. So we talked about how important goal setting is. This is a tool that students can use to help them set goals, or family members can use to help students set goals. I'm going to show you an example that a student in my class has had the goal of participating in an OT cooking group on Tuesday morning. This was a really hard time for them. So the outcome is that they want to learn to cook simple meals and be more independent at home. The steps: share the goal with my OT, bring a goal sheet, pick a motivation, meet my teacher to share how it went. And simply just listing out the people who are there to support the student with that goal can be really helpful. My teacher, my OT, the intern who helps with the class, my classroom assistant, my friends. For this student, just looking at that part of who can support me helped him greatly to know that if I'm having a hard time, this is a person I can go to ask for help. All right, that's it. We have about 6 more minutes. So I'm going to actually go back to the slide that shows all 9 skills of self-determination. And I'm wondering if anyone...
Looks like Cheryl has her hand up.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So if anyone has comments or questions or examples they want to share.
Oh, sorry, Cheryl. You don't have your hand up. I apologize. It looked like it for a second.
I think we have a little time for that.
Yeah, maybe if you don't have a question, maybe you can share a time that you may have used, you know, an example of one of these areas that you've noticed with your students, positively or negatively. It went well or it didn't.
Well, I've learned that I probably do too much for my student. Honestly.
I was just thinking the same thing, that I feel like I need a lot of help.
Yeah, I think
like not doing for.
right. I think that's what honestly, that's what I'm pulling away from this, is that I probably do a little too much.
I don't think that's uncommon. I think in fact, generally speaking, it can be easier to do it for them, to make these decisions, because you do probably know what they're going to say. A lot of the time you might be surprised. You think, you know, and maybe the kids will just go along with it. But like, you know, I always think parents are the expert on their students. That's kind of a position I hold all the time, that families know them the best, but it's really great to give them those choices and to help them to tell you what they need or what they want, or, you know, let them do some of this themselves. It's a great practice for them.
I want to add that as a teacher, when I first really started learning about self-determination, I was also overwhelmed. And I was thinking to myself, on top of all of these other things, how am I going to provide choice with everything we do? How are we going to practice goal setting and outlining all these steps? And what really helped me was to think about just one time. What is just one time that I can start with to practice this? During our morning meeting, is that a time where I can focus on giving my students choices and to kind of let myself off the hook the rest of the times? But what eventually happened is when I got used to practicing that during that one specific time that I had decided I'm going to do this, it sort of became a natural part of my functioning. So slowly, it began to creep into a lot of the other times because I had practiced it and because it became like a second nature to me. And that was really helpful, just to let myself off the hook and say, this is a time I'm going to do it. And I'm going to focus on that for now, and that's going to be enough.
I just wanted to share. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to share, this just happened this week. My son's 18 and we were supposed to go to, and I agree, I do too, step in and do too much all the time, but we were supposed to go to a dining fundraiser, and he decided he didn't want the place that we were going. He didn't want Empanadas, which was the fundraising restaurant. And I was like, well, and it was just him and I was like, well, I'm not going to just go anywhere. And if you don't want that, then we'll just find something here. And he was really determined that he wanted something takeout. And so I kind of just was like, you know what? And he went to the drawer with all the takeout menus and determined what he wanted. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with this for once. And he determined he wanted a calzone. And I said, well, if you want the calzone, you know, I'm gonna have you practice placing the order. And he immediately picked up his cell phone and was ready to call. And I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And you know, I was nervous about kind of, okay, where is this gonna lead to, just in communication challenges. And so I guess all these tools really will help me kind of continue down that road, because he did make the call. I had to advocate with the person, because he put on speakerphone, to let them know that he was going to place the order, but that he was going to need some extra time to get to verbally place the order, because immediately when she couldn't understand him right away, she was just saying hello, hello, and I'm like, you know, so I had to do that piece of it. But it just, the highlight of it was just how proud and confident building it was for him. And he wanted to share. He took out that menu and shared with everybody that came around later on, you know, to share that he had done it. And he was so proud of himself. So, and he's now taking everybody else's order because he wants to place their takeout orders for them. So I just can't believe that one little piece that I was like, okay, I'm going to give up this control and, or, you know, I don't know, not coddling, but just, yeah, it just was a big piece. And this all speaks so highly to that self-determination and self-advocacy. So I just wanted to share that piece that just happened recently.
That's wonderful. And that's a really wonderful example. And Lola, I think your example was wonderful too, because we also have to build our own self-efficacy and our own comfort level in it. And if we feel like we have to take it on all at once, it feels like an impossible task. And your description of just picking one time, one thing, and then this kind of process starts happening that you're not necessarily having to make yourself do as much. And Kate, I love your example of being worried about giving up control. And it's not that we're control freaks. We kind of, well, maybe we are, but we have to think about what the purpose is. You know, there probably was a time when having someone say hello, 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 because they couldn't understand your son, would have felt like that would have a very negative effect. And so it's a learning process for us too, with these examples, to actually see that there can be something positive. But it's also hard for us to believe there can be something positive because we've had all sorts of other less positive experiences. So another good place to let ourselves off the hook.
Yeah. And I did take it a step further. He was willing to go to the place and pay for it. Like, he brought his own money. We went and paid for it. And I said to myself, this probably will be a good experience for the teenager who was on the other line of the phone to now encounter the person that she was speaking with. And so, you know, I did kind of think of that full circle too. And it was a good interaction. We talked about tipping. He was, with my prompt, he did the tip we had discussed ahead of time and stuff like that. So it did really turn into a really great experience. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank all of you for being here and thinking together about self-determination. Let us know if you notice examples, please let us know, because we'd like to share them as well. We don't necessarily have to put your name if you don't want us to, but it would be great for us also to have an opportunity to build that bank of examples, especially examples out in the quote real world. So thanks for helping us all learn. Next Wednesday, April 3rd, we're having our next family learning opportunity. It is in the evening, 6:30 to 7:30, and we'll be talking about housing. So I just want to remind you about that. We will send out reminders. as well. And we hope to see you again at another one of these as they come on. Take care, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.